I was 11 years old, and we had just moved into a very haunted house, and I was having bad psychic experiences that were actually demonic. After working with my mother through prayer, I completely closed down on a psychic level. And I remained closed down until I was the age of 21. At that time, my beloved family doctor had passed on. Everyone was naturally very upset about this. They couldn't understand why it had happened. I was the only one who was very at peace about his passing. I told my mother that I was going to go into prayer and meditation for our doctor. I lit a white candle and I took myself into very deep transcendental meditation. I had been studying spirituality and meditation for quite some time, and I could easily put myself into a trance and get into the state of bliss, which is also known as nirvana. Within a few minutes, I saw this beautiful white light, and I saw a bridge appear before me with a lot of foliage. And I saw my doctor completely dressed in white, and he was so happy. And he glanced at me and he said, "Cynthia, not now. I have to get going." And within an instant, the entire scene was gone. I called my spiritual teacher and I told her about the experience. And she told me that when a soul is passing, it only has a certain amount of time to go into the light, to take instruction from the ascended masters and the angels that are there preparing to guide it over. If it does not make the decision to make the transition at that time, the soul will remain earthbound. Of course, that was many years ago. It was actually close to 40 years ago. Speed up to the year 2002. I am very sick and I am diagnosed with stage 3 cancer of the head and neck. I was in the death process, and the doctors had told me that there was a chance I may not make it and to get my affairs in order. When I went through the surgery, I was placed in a medically induced coma, and this lasted for 2 days. One of the experiences that I remember was I was in a chapel. I was very familiar with this chapel, as I am part Scottish, and some of my lineage does connect to Glastonbury in England. And in this chapel, I saw Jesus and Mary levitating, and above them, roses, pink roses, were manifesting out of thin air. At the foot of these beloved ascended masters, I saw my mother and my hospital chaplain praying that I would make it through the surgery. They were both in the hospital chapel and they were on their knees and they were begging for me to have a second chance at life. And I was consciously aware that I was going to come back and I was going to complete what it was I had to do, because I was very concerned about my mother and my stepfather during that time. 2 days later, after this surgery, I came through, and my mother and my surgeon were holding my hands, and I was very displaced when it came to time frames, time passes more quickly on the other side. Several hours on the earth plane can be years in the spirit realm once you have disembodied. After a week in intensive care, I was still on life support, but they had given me more oxygen through my tracheotomy, and I was learning how to deal with it. I was coping with physical therapy, and I was trying to manage the pain without any kind of drugs. And the doctors agreed to let me have the experience simply by meditation and deep breathing. So I would put my oxygen and I would just allow that oxygen to come into me, and I would take myself into a deep state of meditation. One evening, I could not breathe and I began to panic. I was losing consciousness and I was trying to reach the nurse's call button. And I don't remember if I reached that call button or not, because I found myself out of the body, floating upwards very rapidly. And within an instant, I was in a cemetery. I floated up to a tombstone where a young woman was kneeling and she was crying. And beside her were two of my ancestors, and they were comforting her. Telepathically, these two ancestors, I said, have I crossed on? Am I on from the physical? Am I in the spirit realm now, preparing to go to the next level? And they said, yes, but you haven't crossed on. You are going back. And with that telepathic message, I was immediately back in my body. And all of the healthcare professionals were around me that had witnessed the whole incident and had worked to bring me back to life. When I came to and I fully grounded and centered from this experience, my sensitivity was heightened far beyond what it was before. I clearly could see the direction that this planet was headed. I had seen many signs for a number of decades, but in the spirit realm, they stressed to me the seriousness of the state of mankind and many things that would come to pass if they did not begin to raise their consciousness to a higher level known as the Christ consciousness or the higher consciousness, which is one of divine love, concern, and compassion for not only themselves, but for all living beings.